Welcome back, everybody. I'm Sunir, CEO of AppBind and president of the Cloud Software Association here. I'm here with a very interesting agency owner, Pat Ahern from Intergrowth, who has, I think, found a really sharp way to scale his agency to now 50 people. And I'm so glad to have you here. Pat, why don't you introduce yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Sunir, absolutely. Thank you for the introduction. So my name's Pat. I helped start a 50-person SEO-centric content marketing agency named Intergrowth. Our team started out back in 2016. I guess it was mid-2016. Myself and my then business partner started bootstrapping the business before eventually jumping into it full-time. Today, our team focuses 100% on SEO-centric content marketing agency for high-growth businesses. I really like to say we help the underdogs of the industry to overtake the industry leaders as fast as possible.
I love that line because so many agencies that I see are focused on their technical skills, especially SEO. Like we do SEO, SEM, keyword analysis, no one cares. Like no client cares. It's like a plumber explaining to you how good their welding is. Like that's great for you. Right? Is my toilet going to get fixed? That's really what they care about. And when it's having that business proposition, especially because it identifies the target, like as the underdogs who want to become position one, I just think it's spot on. You must be good content writers. Go figure.
I like to think so. I've fortunately had a lot of time to think about that proposition, but a lot of it came from just looking at all the clients we've helped out over time and just realizing, working with those underdogs of the industry, that's what really excites the team. That's what gets us out of bed in the morning. It's seeing the little guys come through that have a tenth of the budget of their biggest competitors and knowing that we're going to do everything possible to help them overtake this leader. And we're really just going to have to play off of a nimble budget, think critically, and come up with really innovative ideas and really just out hustle some of the competitors that are out there. So I'm definitely a big fan of it. It took a long time for us to all come up with that wording together.
All right, awesome. So, the thing with SEO, and this whole podcast is about getting out of that scalability trap of selling labor for money, and then how do you keep scaling that without increasing the risk in your own life as an agency owner? So I'm gonna be a palooka because I've talked before, and pretend I'm skeptical of your business and ask you a few questions. Just because you've done it. So first, like SEO is very like human labor because you're writing content. So are you just doing the content, or have you added other services?
Yeah, great question. So for our team, we start out by identifying what are those keywords at a very high level that are going to be most beneficial for a client to rank for. And from there, we map out what is it we need to do to rank for any of those individual keyword themes that we're going after. Time and time again, we see that the best way to rank for many of those themes is going to be to write a long form, well-researched educational piece of content about those themes, positioning our client as the expert and really giving them the opportunity to educate their consumers on these individual topics. But I would call that really phase one of the process. Within that, we're also taking a look at the client's existing site. We're figuring out what existing pages do they have to work with that we can re-optimize, reposition maybe, so that we can leverage the value of, let's say, their homepage or a core features page on their site to rank for some of these other themes as well. But after we've created this well-optimized content, after we've optimized the existing pages of the site, the third big facet we focus on is getting other industry-leading publications to link back to this content. And I like to refer to this as the catalyst for growth, the thing that's going to get these articles to rank at the top of Google in 3 months instead of 6 months, so that the client starts getting leads way faster in the process. So we really treat it as, I'd say, a three-pronged approach of one, set the foundation for their website so that they're correctly positioned and Google's able to clearly understand their site. Two, write the best content on the internet about those topics that are most valuable for them to rank for. And then three, go out and promote the content, build high quality links to the content, and do everything possible to get people to start sharing the content across social media.
Yeah, that sounds really labor intensive. So do you have scalable margins? This is the real question that this podcast is trying to answer.
Absolutely. So that, and I'll try not to go too deep into the origin story within this one, but That I think was one of the really big motivating factors that led to the creation of Intergrowth. So when we first started out, myself and my business partner were working at a previous agency. The way I would describe it, that agency had been around for about a decade. Everything was running along smoothly. I would describe them as a typical agency in terms of margins. I would guess they were probably at like a 10%, maybe a 15% margin. One of the things we saw, though, is our theory was that the industry was changing and that globalization was starting to become more and more prevalent. We were starting to see the rise of platforms like Fiverr and Upwork. And our theory was that is the best way to build the agency of the future is by leveraging the freelance economy, hiring the best people in the world instead of the best people that live within a 30-minute drive of the office. And most importantly, don't bring them on the team with the expectation that they're going to be full time. Instead, look to hire great people, try and get a feel for their availability, and then work to fit them into the work system that you have, whether they're looking for 5 hours or 30 hours of work a week. So ultimately, the secret to success for us from day one has been hiring on all these different freelance platforms, finding people that maybe only want 10 hours of work a week. And then with some of those people, we scale them up. Our head of content right now started out as a freelancer on the team, working 5 hours a week, and now is full time on the team. So that is, I think, the first thing I would say is, as an agency owner, it's really difficult for everyone on the team to escape the call it like the hourly billable trap. One of the things that we found to be extremely helpful in the process, though, is look to largely hire freelance talent. You get unique access to people from all across the world that are going to think about problems in different manners and encourage you to think more critically about your systems. Two, you gain way more flexibility where you don't necessarily need to hire, let's say, a graphic designer, knowing that you're going to have to commit $5,000 to $6,000 a month to them. Instead, you can hire a graphic designer, come up with an agreement where maybe you pay them $30 an hour, and then you scale up their work over time as the work is there to justify further involvement.
Do you find, you mean, I don't know, are you tracking the metrics of the bench, so to speak, of how you scale up and scale down work to each of your freelancers? Do you measure it?
Oh, absolutely. Probably not as heavily as I should be, but about once a month I sit
That's why
down
I
and
asked the
take a look
question.
at who are some of the members of the team that are most heavily involved in the process.
Mm.
For the people that we see that might be working, 30 hours a week, let's say, or even 25 hours a week, that's when we really start looking into it. And oftentimes we'll try and just put out a feeler to them to say, hey, would you like to join the team full time? Or similarly, are you happy with where you're at? And in some cases, it's led to people coming on the team full time. In a lot of cases, though, what we found out is people don't really want to work full time for any one company. And that could certainly just be our one business's unique scenario. I don't know what that says about me as a leader if people don't want to be working on the team more so, but jokes aside, one of the things we found interesting is some of these contractors will say to us like, hey, no, I really like my current setup. I work 20 hours a week, helping your business. I work 10 hours a week for other clients, and I have way more flexibility to take a month of vacation at any time that I want to. So I guess, short answer there, we'll look at the benchmarks on a monthly basis, get a sense of who is working maybe enough hours to the point where it makes sense to bring them on board full time, and really just try and get a sense of, do these people want to come on board full time? If not, that's when we'll look to say, okay, if we're scaling up, let's figure out who's the next contractor that we can bring on board to help supplement this other role.
Interesting. This idea of a network agency. And by the way, you said how many? What's your staff to freelancer ratio? Like how many
Yeah,
staff
so
do you have?
we are, man, math, let me think. That would put us at about, I think it's 13 to 1, or 1 to
Oh, that's
13,
great.
I guess would be a better way of putting it. So we have myself and three other full-time employees on the team right now. And then we have about 45 or 50 contractors right now. So I'm sure math is
Yeah,
not
that's great.
quite right there, but somewhere around, let's say, that 1 to 13 ratio.
This network agency or agency of freelancers model is like so flexible and powerful. It's hard to do. So, I mean, the biggest risk with doing this, and I ask because we are, I'm, I don't believe anything. No, it's like how it's quality control, which is I think the whole point of this podcast. Like, how do you manage the quality when you have all these people you barely know. I mean, it's not the same interview process necessarily with a freelancer, and they have other clients, and like you're adding and removing time, and things can get messy. And I think this is what scares a lot of agencies, why they want to have people within 30 minutes of the office so they control that person. You guys have figured it out. What do you think are the elements that allow you to control this situation?
Great question. So I would probably break it down into two core elements. So one of the things I think that we found to be most effective since day one, our team has been obsessed with process. In this example didn't work out so well back in the day because at the time Chipotle was dealing with all these massive E. coli scares, unfortunately. But since day one, we really started out saying that we're building the Chipotle of marketing agencies, and the whole mindset behind that was Chipotle is a place that you can go to where, regardless of which Chipotle you go to across the world, you're going to get the exact same burrito at roughly the same price point, let's say, maybe a 10-20% markup or markdown depending on the city or state. But ultimately, no matter where you go, any Chipotle location you go into, you can get all the exact same menu items and you're going to get very similar quality of food. The whole reason for that is Chipotle has perfected quality control. And at the same time, that food is going to taste very good and it's going to be coming in at a pretty reasonable price point. Certainly, you could go to a really nice steakhouse, you could spend probably 4 times as much, and you're going to have a way better meal than that Chipotle experience. But at the end of the day, who's going to be able to justify going out for that $50 steak every day compared to, call it, that $10 chicken burrito that you might go for? So our whole mindset was, let's build a business that is obsessed with quality control, and let's focus on documenting everything we do. So part one of our core company values is processize it, which I'm 90% sure I made up that word, but I love the sound of it regardless. The whole mindset that we've really set out to achieve is, if there's something that our team is going to do more than once, take twice as long the first time through it, document that process so that A, if you need to reference how to do it anytime in the future, you have this great document that you can fall back on. B, let's say you hate doing that thing. You now no longer have to do this thing because you've documented exactly how to do it. You can hand it off to anyone else on the team, coach them through how to do it. And then now we have twice as many people on the team that know how to do that. And there's half as much of a likelihood that you're ever going to have to do that thing again. But third, let's say that we have 2 different people on the team that do the same task for 2 different clients. Since we have that shared process, we know at the end of the day, both of those clients are going to get that exact same deliverable because both people are approaching that problem from the exact same methodology. And then within quality control, the most important thing I firmly believe in, the last step that you'll see in every one of our process docs, is break these rules before you let it interfere with the quality of your work. Every member of our team is an expert in what they do. I always want to give them the guardrails so that they can help to perfect their quality and can stay as consistent as possible. But I would say at least once a week, I get a note from someone on the team reaching out and saying, hey, this process doesn't make sense, or I think we should do this way. And 99% of the time, they're absolutely right because they know better than me about their area of expertise. So setting that mindset of, hey, this process doc is going to work okay right now, but always look for opportunities to improve it. Always look for opportunities that we can get around the process, and just inform the rest of the team if you are going to break the rules here, because chances are everyone on the team should be breaking that rule. So I would say that's really area number 1, is the obsession with quality control and documenting everything we do. And then from there, really making it straightforward for everyone on the team to access. So we've been building that out within a platform called Notion. So it's, I would say, far more straightforward for everyone on the team to access any of these process docs and search for them. The second core element that's helped us out in, I would say, scaling up quality services is focusing very heavily on the core traits that we hire for within every person that we bring onto the team. And so I'll share one book recommendation here for listeners. So one of the most influential books that I've been lucky enough to listen to is called The Ideal Team Player. And I'll have to get back to you, Sunir. Well, maybe in the show notes, I'll shoot you a note afterwards and we can look up the author because I unfortunately always forget his name. But the ideal team player, I started reading it because at the time our team was really struggling to get hiring right. We were spending a lot of time interviewing people. We'd had a few people that we hired full time that just didn't work out. And ultimately, I said, okay, we need to figure out how is it that we hire better? What is it we need to do? How can we systematize hiring? And more or less, we stole the insights from this book, which is to focus really entirely on hiring people that serve three core traits that I've slightly renamed. Those three traits are hire people that are humble, hungry, and emotionally intelligent. And with emotional intelligence, I break it down into three components. One is emotional self awareness, two is emotional perception, and then three is compassion. So, self awareness, are you aware of who you are as a person? What ticks you off? What makes you happy? Where you're best in work? Where you're worst in work? Perception is really your ability to read others, understand what's going to help them to grow. And then compassion is bringing it all together and saying, when you understand what someone needs in order to be better off, are you someone who's going to use that to help them? Or are you someone who, on the opposite side of things, may try and leverage that for your own gains? So focusing on hiring for those three traits, building our whole hiring process around that, and really focusing on hiring people that can, I would say, match every one of those traits, truly are good human beings that care about helping clients to grow, we found to be the key success variable.
So, you know, the hiring for values is a very difficult interview process, and you know it's fine to say such a thing, but I think it's Patrick Lencioni. Is that right? Who wrote the book?
Absolutely. Yeah, thank you for looking
Okay,
that up if you did.
yeah. So, did it like does the book explain how to interview this, or did you develop your own interview practice to test for this when you're hiring people? Like, how do you check?
Great question. Yeah, so the book, there was I'm trying to think. There was a PDF that they reference in the book that I was able to find online afterwards that breaks down some of the good starting points for questions. For us, we started rolling out this hiring process, I believe, when we were looking for our last full time hire. And Tyler's been, I don't know if I can cuss on the podcast, but Tyler's been kicking ass since he joined the team about a year ago. Um, but so what we found is as we were starting to roll out this system, for better or worse, we were kind of put in the scenario where we had to adopt this system as we were going through the hiring process. Short answer though, we definitely borrowed some questions from Patrick in the book. And then other questions we just brought in on our own based on experiences with working with past hires and all things of that sort. So what we really started out mapping out is saying, okay, if we're looking for these three core traits, what are a couple of questions that we can ask or things that we can keep in mind that are going to help us to hire for these traits? So for example, in terms of humility, I love to ask people, let's say that we're hiring someone who works in the content marketing space. I love to start out by saying, hey, talk to me about some of the content marketers that you follow. And maybe they list off three or four content marketers. And then as a little BS litmus test, what I love to do is ask them, talk to me about the most recent thing that you consumed that this person put together. If someone's saying that they read Brian Dean every single day, but they can't reference an article that he's written or a video that he's put out within the past 6 months, let's say, I'm a little skeptical there. Maybe I can ask them a follow-up. Maybe I dig a little bit deeper. But yeah, short answer, a lot of the reference points that we've looked at came from the ideal team player. And then based on that, we then went out and expanded that list from there.
That's interesting. And so, do you have? So there's a. Do you remember what the PDF is that Patrick mentioned in the book? Just so people can Google it.
I don't. You know what I'll do after this? Let me jot down a note for myself. I will send over that PDF to you, and we can upload the link to the show notes.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Perfect.
That'd be amazing. I think it's so hard to hire people like this with values, and I think it's like a mystery. It feels like a magic trick to so many people. We used to do it at FreshBooks and Olark in totally different ways. It was like every company, it's hard to teach people how to evaluate values. I'm gonna say that for sure.
It is.
And then and do you actually interview every freelancer? Like, what's the process? Some people hire freelancers quick. They hire quick and fire quick, or is it a long process? And why would freelancers put up with it? A long interview process.
Yeah,
as people are concerned about. So how do you manage this?
great question. So for hiring freelancers, I would say we do a more abridged process. So myself and then our head of content, Ginny, will typically handle most of the hiring process. For full-time hires, I describe it as a much more exhaustive process because certainly it's a much larger investment that's going in, both in terms of monetary resources every month and then time that's going into onboarding. For hiring for freelancers, we abridge that process quite a bit. Typically, we try and limit it to about a 30-minute interview, ideally over video call. But what we'll do is we'll really try and get a sense of that freelancer's background, try and vet for humble, hungry, and emotionally intelligent, and try and get a sense of their bandwidth, as well as experience they have on similar projects. Within that, we'll always ask them for samples of their past work so we can vet the quality of those samples across a couple different vetting parameters. For content writers, I love to use Grammarly in particular. It's a phenomenal tool that I think we spend maybe $40 a month for right now and gives us just incredible quality control in our writing. But one of our favorite things to do from there is once we get a sense that someone is likely a really great fit for the team from that initial interview and the initial content vetting, we then invite them on board for a paid test project. So for our team, we have two different publisher sites that we own and we run behind the scenes. We are making, I would say, almost nothing revenue wise from those two sites. But both these sites give us a playground that we can work with to experiment with new Google updates or other search engine updates that may be coming out. Gives us an opportunity to test out new plugins in a pretty much risk-free environment. And then it also serves as our testing platform for new people that we're bringing onto the team. So a very common process we'll go through is we will create a test project for any of these freelancers that we're planning on bringing on board, focused on vetting them for all sorts of elements that we see as regular issues that'll come through in terms of quality control. We will pay them for the time that goes into that project and ultimately look to see A, what's the quality of the final deliverable, and B, what degree of communication do they share throughout the process? Are they hostile if we give them negative feedback or if we share constructive criticism with them? Are they quick to respond to us? Do they get back to us, let's say, within a business day, or do they take 1 to 2 weeks to respond to us? And all that helps us to get a much better sense of, hey, is this someone that makes sense to bring onto the team? Is this someone that is really going to be interested in coming into the team in the long term, let's say? And then for people that pass that test, we'll slowly start them out on more of internal projects from there, get them onboarded into our project management system, pay for the time that goes into them onboarding themselves through our workflow that we've built out. And then we'll scale up their work as we see them proving themselves from some of these internal projects that we work on.
Well, it's quite a lot of investment up front on a freelancer. I love that you have two test projects as well that you've been building out over time also to sharpen your own saw as an agency. That's a little throwaway in there that I think is actually gold. Yeah. So like how much would you invest in hiring a freelancer, like dollars wise? I think it's interesting.
Yeah, good question. So if I had to ballpark, I'd say it's probably a $400 investment per freelancer that we bring onto the team. Yeah, I'd say about.
Yeah, it's totally worth it. Yeah, I mean, why take that risk with an actual client, which is worth so much more, right?
And I will say in the early days of the company, I unfortunately made that mistake in the past. We had one freelance writer who wrote an article that when we put it through our editing quality control process, we found out that editor had almost entirely plagiarized the article and just stolen it from an online source. So quality control for the win there saved us from getting sued. We had another scenario where we did have a freelancer who wrote an article. When they wrote it, they decided that they really liked the article, and the client had collaborated on that one with us quite a bit. And the freelancer had threatened to keep the article for themselves and just not bill us for the time. And so that created a whole whirlwind there. But after that, we said, hey, let's set everyone up with a test project before we bring them on board. All little road bumps along the way.
We're watching a lot of Hell's Kitchen for no reason. I love Gordon Ramsay. So there's there are, in his terms, donkeys in the kitchen. And similarly, when you're hiring people like this, you might have some trouble. One thing I want to go back to is you write everything down. One of the problems with processes in a content production house is that a lot of the processes are still not something you can just like write a bunch of. I don't know how detailed your processes are, but they're not like click here kind of docs. Some things are like thinking problems, right? And they are the human element. So in the kitchen you have the expediter, just final quality control before it goes to the client. Do you have some way of doing quality control over your freelancers before they pass work on to the client?
Yeah, absolutely. And it's a phenomenal question you bring up. That's I would say that's probably been one of the most difficult things for us to document is, to your point, there's there's such a large degree of skill that goes into really any form of, I guess I would say, expertise. There's going to be that certain degree of tacit knowledge, as I like to put it. With writing, what we've found to be most effective is we specifically look to hire writers and train writers to be expert researchers. And then from there, our goal is when we onboard a writer that they already show great potential as a writer, and we can coach them up on some of the minor details from there. But as far as the quality control of the writing process goes, so it's a very collaborative process that we go through. For many clients that we work with, we start out by having the writer put together an outline of the approved topic that we've put together. That's ultimately the skeleton of what the final draft is going to look like, with some resources sprinkled throughout there. We then have a dedicated editor of the team review that article outline and then share feedback, approve it from there. We then have our head of content, Ginny, hop in and review each of those outlines as well. Typically, that's going to be a quick skim from her end, but making sure that we're accurately reflecting the perspective of, let's say, the client's views on a particular piece of content or a particular element. From there, we, in most cases, will send it off to the client for approval on that overarching direction of the content piece. Once approved, we write the final draft of the article, have one editor optimize it and edit it for better readability, conciseness, and then optimize it for modern day search. And that's when a quality assurance specialist hops in as a second editor to give it one final read, make sure it reflects the client's brand voice, their product positioning, and much more. And then from there, that's when we would send it off to the client.
Wow, that's amazing. How long did it take you to figure this out? Because this is like quite a substantial operation.
I would say it's been a lot of trial and error. It'd be wrong for me to take credit for it. This has been mostly Ginny building out this system, and then so the person who was previously in this role as head of content, a guy named Darren. The two of them together did a phenomenal job building the system out, and I would say I more was just there to provide feedback on the systems that they built. Ballpark, I'd say it was probably a 4-year process, 5-year process to get it where it's at today. But that being said, I truly don't believe that it's ever going to be perfect. And I tell our team this all the time, process is going to change. There's going to be areas for improvement. There's going to be new tools that come out. The best we're ever going to get is an A- with any process docs that we put out. And we should always be aiming for that A+, because that's going to be what gets us to the next thing, helps us to be better, and then helps us to stay at the end of the day at that A- quality process. But I'd say, yeah, probably 4 years to get us to where we are today.
Yeah, it's wild. I mean, it does take that long, honestly. Like, but hopefully, anyone listening to this will get a big leg up, because some of these things are obvious to you now, but going into it, it's like, what are you supposed to do? All right, so thank you so much for doing this, Pat. How do people find you? Like, what's your website, LinkedIn, all these things? How do you?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll share a couple links in the show notes, but I'd say best places to reach me are going to be at Pat Ahern1. So PATAHERN followed by the number 1. Would love it if I could get just the Twitter handle Pat Ahern, but no luck on that yet. Feel free to reach out to me via email. I love connecting with other agency owners, whether it is talking shop, talking process related elements, talking about collaboration ideas. For me, I work remotely, so it's always fun just connecting with other like-minded people. You can feel free to reach me at pat@intergrowth.co, INTER-GROWTH.co. For simplicity, you can just email me at INTERGROWTH, so intergrowth without the dash. That'll reach me as well. I'm trying to think where else though. And then I guess for our website, that would be another important one. just inter-growth.co, inter-growth.co. That's where we share all the best insights that we can put together, whether it is content marketing related, agency onboarding advice. We try our best to document everything possible and stay as open source as possible to help out the community.
Yeah, I really appreciate it. I mean, this does really help out the community here, and your website is great as well. So it's great that you're paying it forward, for sure. It's a big help to others.
Well, thank you.
With that, I'm going to say thank you so much for being here. It's been amazing.
Sunir, it was my pleasure. Thank you for having me on today. I'll follow up with you. We can just sync via email. I'll share a couple of those resources so we can add that into the show notes. But honestly, this has been a blast. Thank you for having me today.
For more great insights on partnerships and software, like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next video.